James Ashworth, William Barmer,
Roger Birch, John Brewer,
James Burrow, John Burrow,
William Charley, Walter Crawford,
Richard Dilworth, Joshua Edwards,
Arthur Fox, Harold Gardner,
Tom Gardner, Frank Garside,
William Gibson, George Hodgson,
Thomas Kendall, Alfred King,
John Logan, Thomas Masheter,
Albert Metcalf, Joseph Nicholson,
Richard Phillips, Carl Robinson,
Cuthbert Sanders, Roger Steele,
Harvey Werry, Frederick Wilkinson.
Samuel Atkinson, Leslie Batch,
Frederick Bainbridge, Mark Birch,
Edward Burns, James Butler,
Arnold Campbell, Robert Chapman,
John Cole, Edward Coward,
Michael Dickinson, John Dickinson,
Austin Drinkhall, Fraser Farish,
Dennis Grundy, James Grundy,
Derek Hadwin, Peter Haig,
John Hayward, Robert Hill,
Peter Inman, Charles Irvin,
Dennis Johnson, James Johnston,
John Lancaster, Victor McDougall,
Joseph Moore, Robert Nolte,
Evan Phillips, Richard Phillips,
William Powell, Edward Proctor,
Geoffrey Rabbage, Braithwaite Richardson,
Theodore Rimmer, Laurie Sharp,
Eric Sinkinson, William Smith,
Eden Spencer, William Spry,
Thomas Stables, George Standfast,
Harold Tyson, Sidney Tyson,
Morris Walker, Frederick Warren,
John Watts, Basil Weston, Frank Wright.
Doris Tyson, John Atkinson,
James Bevins, Raymond Cannon,
John Davies, William Dickinson,
Thomas Ellum, John Cairns,
John Gateskill, Henry Hadley,
Eric Malone, Thomas Milburn,
Arthur Miller, Roland Miller,
Alan Norton, Thomas Sewell,
Joseph Trotter, Noble Whiteside,
Arthur Wilkinson, Stanley Wilson.
In Flanders fields, the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place in the sky, the lark still bravely singing fly, scarce heard among the guns below.
We are the dead, short days ago, we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe, to you from failing hands we throw, the torch, be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
A couple of months ago, me and my family decided to take a hike up Black Combe. Now, I did not know that this hike was going to turn to national media attention. You see, on the 20th of July 2020, whilst making our way up Black Combe, I noticed a foreign object sticking out from under a rock, so naturally I bent down to have a look. As I did, I immediately noticed a thin metal chain with what seemed to be a name tag attached to the end. After seeing this, I then proceeded to pick the artefact up. Now, I did not know that by doing this, I had just changed the course of any of my upcoming events. Now, after I brought the chain up to the sun, I noticed there was some form of inscription on either side. After seeing this, I read out, not expecting to read anything more than a dog's name and a phone number. But when I did read out, I noticed at this point, straight away, that this wasn't just some old dog collar, but something that at this point I did not know. Now, I thought this because it read on one side AUX 429771. And on the opposite side, A2 Sterling. And these aren't what you would normally see on the average dog collar. After reading this, I decided to place the dog tag in my pocket and continue the hike up. When we arrived home, we decided to post a picture onto Facebook to see if maybe anyone had lost it in the last couple of days, but instead we received back a picture of what seemed to be a certificate. Now, this may not sound too interesting, but on the certificate it had his date of birth, his full name, William Ernest Wills, and some other information that was also on the dog tag. After reading this, we immediately posted the same post onto Around the Coombe Facebook page to see if anyone knew anything more about it. This was a key point in us finding the family because not long after the post was released, it went viral on the page, and this is what sparked the interest of Radio Cumbria. They got in contact with us, and the next day we had a live segment on Radio Cumbria. Now, after this segment, we received hundreds of messages providing us with more information about the family, and then we received a text from Channel 9 News asking if they could have an interview with us. Now, of course, we said yes, and later that week, in the wind and the rain, we filmed a segment. Now, this segment changed everything, as this was being broadcast to the whole of Australia, and because of this, the family got in touch. They were ecstatic that we'd found this dog tag and had belonged to their father whilst he was based at what is now known as Hafford Prison. We immediately set a date for when we would send it back over to Australia, so after we gained media attention over here in England, we went on with things like BBC and ITV, all of them wanting to know every last inch of detail about how we found it and what it was like. Now, all of this media attention really made the day we posted the dog tag that even more special, because it wasn't just us that had been on the long journey to getting it to Australia, because many people chipped in with facts and more places on where the family were located and who the family were. So when I finally handed the parcel over, I knew that its journey was over. Now, a couple of months later, it has safely arrived over in Australia and has now taken pride of place in the Wills family home. Now, finding this has really brought it home for me, as it showed me how much sacrifice anybody made fighting in any war and place, because this man travelled thousands of miles to protect our country.
This Remembrance Day, we at UVHS want to shine a spotlight on the largely forgotten contributions of black soldiers in World War II. They fought against Hitler, helped to rebuild Britain after the war, and helped to create the multicultural Britain we are proud of. Joe will tell you about the Young family, 3 of whom gave their lives in World War II, and the life of Sam King, whose post-war contributions to Britain earned him an MBE.
Patty Flynn lost her father and 2 brothers during World War II. Her eldest brother, Jocelyn Young, was aboard a merchant ship in the Far East when Japan declared war on the Allies in 1941. The vessel went missing and Jocelyn was declared dead at sea, aged 20. Within a year, his father, Wilmot Young, had also been reported lost at sea after the ship he was aboard was hit. But the tragedy of wartime was not ended for the Young family. Another of Patty's brothers, Arthur, was also killed in action. An accomplished trumpet player, Arthur signed up with the Royal Air Force in July 1944. Arthur and the crew of a Lancaster bomber never returned home from Normandy. Smoke was seen coming from a trail of the plane before it crashed in bad visibility, finally landing in Manchester. A cargo of bombs exploded and all the crew died. Patty campaigned for 26 years for a plaque in honour of black and minority ethnic soldiers, servicemen and women, which was unveiled in Cardiff in 2019. She attended the ceremony, which was held in front of 200 people. Patty Flynn died in September of this year, aged 88, having lived a long life. Sam King was one of around 10,000 men and women from the British Caribbean colonies who left their families and homes to join the British Armed Forces, working behind the scenes and on the front lines to defeat the Nazis. Enthusiasm to defend King and Empire was widespread in the British colonies in the Caribbean. In 1944, Sam responded to an advert in a Jamaican newspaper that called for volunteers to join the Royal Air Force to fight in the Second World War. Even though he was not from the UK, Sam understood the importance of joining the forces to defeat Hitler's regime. He said, "I was privileged working with people from Norway to Africa. We all had to work together to beat Nazi Germany. The Germans were doing bad things. They murdered people like vermin. We had to fight for our own salvation." After carrying out initial training in Kingston, Sam left Jamaica and set sail for Britain. His biggest shock on arriving was the British weather. He said, "I left Portland, Jamaica in 23 degrees. I landed in Scotland, which was -4. I thought I was going to die." Sam was posted to RAF Training Centre in Yorkshire, and then to a fighter base in Kent, where he worked as an engineer. He was stationed to different places in Britain throughout the war as a skilled aircraft fitter. After the war, he was demobilised and returned to Jamaica. Sam struggled to settle into civilian life, finding it difficult to get work, and it was in another advert, this time for tickets on the famous ship the Empire Windrush, that saw him return to the UK. Sam landed at Tilbury Docks on June 21st and rejoined the RAF. After the war, Sam, like many black veterans, experienced racism in Britain. He once said in an interview, "People haven't got time for prejudice when bombs are dropping all over the place, and you're helping. When we were in uniform, we were respected. When the war was over, they said, 'What are you doing here? You should go home.' I came to help them, and now they had their freedom, they said I should go home." Sam left the armed forces in 1953 and settled in London, where he found work with the post office for 34 years. Sam was heavily involved in London's West Indian community, and he helped organise the first Notting Hill Carnival in 1964. He also helped set up the first British newspaper written specifically for a black audience. Sam served as local councillor for 6 months before being elected mayor of a London borough in 1983. He was the first black mayor in the borough and was at the time the only black mayor in London. In 1995, he became the co-founder of the Windrush Foundation, a charitable organisation dedicated to keeping alive the memories of the young men and women who braved the high seas to come to Britain after the war. Sam was appointed an MBE in 1998 as part of the 50th anniversary celebrations of Windrush Day. Sam died peacefully on the 17th of June 2016 at the age of 90.
We will remember.
We will remember.
We will remember.
We will remember.
We will remember.